welcome to another episode of Unbound, the podcast about breaking what breaks us and remembering what binds us. My name is Kiki Lindenau, and before we begin, I invite you to soften your mind and open your heart, to listen not to reply but to connect, and to remember that staying human is a radical act. Welcome to the Unbound podcast. I'm very excited to have you here. And as a yoga teacher and the wonderful host of a yoga podcast yourself, I want to start with a maybe really difficult question. What is yoga?
What is yoga? So I like to answer this question with the idea that yoga is not one more thing that we have to do. I think a lot of times when we hear yoga, we're thinking about the physical part of the practice. And I've got to make time for my yoga practice. I've got to get to my yoga practice. And we're sort of rushing around trying to get to our yoga and almost like checking it off of a to-do list. But really, yoga is the lens through which we do everything, the way that we see everything, the way that we live our life. And yoga, when we hold it as a focus, it actually clears space in our life. There are so many definitions of yoga. But that's the one that I like to give to set the tone for this idea of presence, because I think when we operate from a bit more awareness and a bit more presence, our capacity to show up in the world with more empathy for others and for ourselves as well is so much higher.
That was the best definition I've ever found. I've been searching for one far and wide, and I think this sums it up really, really well. What would you say then does it mean to practice yoga?
To practice yoga. Yeah, so in what form? I would think it just means coming back over and over again to connecting with the true intention of the yoga. And whether that means that you actually sit down and you want to read the Yoga Sutras and you're somebody who's really into the philosophy and you want to understand how it could be applied, or whether that's further studies on your own. Maybe it's starting a meditation habit and just instead of reading about the experience of the yoga, because ultimately yoga is to get us to be able to meditate, right? That's one of the final limbs, is this experience of true meditation. And there's a lot of prerequisites, and there's a lot of beautiful things, by the way, that happen on that journey when we start to work our way through the 8 limbs. But yeah, I would say it's coming back to your continuous focus on the yoga. I would say that's more of an accurate way to describe practicing yoga, is to focus on yoga. Can you set aside 10 minutes of every single day to experience working on your meditation practice? And I'm not here to like preach at, if you're listening, right, I'm not here to be like, you should really do this and it's really easy, because truthfully, I've been teaching yoga full time for about 3 years, and I've been practicing it, since I was maybe 15. It wasn't until this year that I developed my first ever most consistent yoga meditation practice. I was practicing the asana form of the yoga consistently much before the meditation, but I'd honestly suggest that that be inverted in a lot of cases. I think it's even more important to set aside that time for the meditation practice and see what comes to the surface and what you may feel called to investigate as part of your further practice of the yoga.
Why do you think that so much of the practice here in the West is the exact opposite of that? Like, it's going to do yoga, which means doing a bunch of sequences on the mat and none of the going inward, none of the meditation. Where does that come from?
Yeah. So I think that I used to feel really frustrated by this. And recently I have felt frustrated again. I've had like a renewal of frustration because I've been spending some time in an area of the world where the yoga isn't what I am used to, because I've actually been very spoiled. And while there are many yoga classes in the West that don't focus on the spiritual, I've had some really wonderful teachers who have opened the door for me to change my life. And it's not just because they provided 2 minutes of shavasana, it's because they were teaching a class in a way that was so profound that I felt something. I felt the call to continue and to ultimately become a yoga teacher and to be spending now almost 200 episodes talking about yoga to other leaders. So I had this sort of renewal of, I guess, a reality check. And I started attending these yoga practices that were like subbing out Urdhva Hastasana, like arms up for touchdown arms. They were like making football jokes and all of this. And I was like, what is happening to the yoga? Like touchdown arms, what is this? I don't want to hear about sports. And it's such a silly thing when I'm trying to practice non-judgment towards them because I get it. And what's happening, to answer your question, is that the yoga is meeting people where they are at. And often when that is driven by capitalism, especially, it is meeting people where they are at in a way that is going to sell. Something that people can really conceptualize. They can conceptualize a downward facing dog. It's a tangible thing. Now, if we start talking about pratyahara and sense withdrawal, it's like, what in the hell is that? That sounds crazy. I don't even know what that is. Like, how can I grasp that? How can I have that, right? Because we're so focused on this having. You know, we've been told that we must have something, have the money or have the physical appearance or the strength or whatever, and then we can do something, and then we can be something happy, right? So we've been taught that it's to have and then to do and then to be. So it makes sense to me that we're seeing the having and the doing portion of the yoga before the being, but really we know when we step back, the real order of things should be to be, and then we can do, and then finally maybe we can have. But when we get to that having, it probably won't even be what we thought we wanted to have in the first place. Should focus more on the being, but we're seeing just meeting people where they're at in their belief that they must have something in order to be something like happy.
For someone who's hearing this and who's like, oh man, this sounds really interesting. I want to move away from that having and toward the being, but I have no idea how to do that. Do you have any recommendations for someone who wants to get into yoga as a way of being?
Yeah, absolutely. It takes a leap of faith because you cannot see the results immediately. You have to get comfortable with showing up and developing this subtle form of your practice long before you're going to see any external result. And we're so progress and so result driven. We very much live in a reward society. And actually, I've recently listened to an interview related to this that I really liked by the author of Dopamine Nation, and talking about how it's like if we set ourselves up to just constantly be seeking the reward, that if we're not getting an immediate reward from something, it's not going to feel as much of value to us. So to expand further into that and to give like a more tangible step that people could take, my writing practice was really important to me for this reason. I think that was a huge shift because it can feel
What does
really,
that mean?
yeah.
Did you have prompts that you responded to, or is there a yoga script that people can follow?
So I didn't have prompts at first. I would literally I felt the call to write. I don't know if you ever get that sort of inspired feeling. And I didn't really know what it was at first. I guess I used to get it as a child too. And I used to like to write in this little comp book. And I would write like pieces of things that inspired me. But basically, as a way, the whole purpose of the writing was to start to process these things that I was taking in from the yoga philosophy, or things I heard in class, or ideas that came to my mind of, oh, I would actually like to start living in this way. And to stop that just consumption of things, because it can start to feel kind of yucky when you're just feeding yourself more and more rules that you should be following in order to be a good yogi, right? And we can kind of get real obsessive and we're just consuming and consuming that. But start to actually process that through you and start to write about it. And don't make it so much like it has to be specifically about yoga in the way that you would think that you should be writing about yoga. Recently, I have been actually writing about yoga, but I didn't start like that. I think that it's important to understand that not everything is yoga, but yoga is in everything. You can find that element of the yoga. If you're listening and you're like, I don't know what she's talking about, you'll start to feel it. It's just a way of being. And I think the easiest way to simplify it is that moment of presence. And I would like to clarify that moment of presence. If you can imagine on a morning like today, where I am in Seattle, Washington, and it's nice and foggy outside, and it's cool and crisp. In the morning, I wake up, get a little lemon water, a coffee, whatever you want, and you sit outside and you haven't touched your phone. You haven't looked at the to-do list that you have for the day. You're not doing chores. You're not cleaning things. You're just getting up with that kind of fresh blank slate, and you're going out to sit outside and to enjoy a pause, like a true pause, just a slow moment. Maybe you set your coffee down or your tea down and you just take 3 rounds of breath, or maybe you take 10 minutes. I don't know. But in those moments when you kind of have these, like, it looks like you're resonating and you've maybe had a moment like this today or another day that you can think of. They often happen on vacation too, when we give ourselves that kind of break from our routine. But
True.
in those moments, nothing is wrong. Like, you feel deeply, you feel the magic of the moment, you feel the magic of life, and you feel a sense of awe often, or you just feel a sense of contentment. Yeah, so that feeling can start to extend throughout your day and throughout your life eventually. And to me, like, that's the real benefit of the yoga.
Hello, my name is Beth Reedy, and I am a part of Adaptive Yoga Northwest. We are a program in the greater Seattle metro area and online that offers classes to people with disabilities. And we offer programs that help people connect through their mind-body experiences and do it in an inclusive way. I started out as an occupational therapist and found it was hard to give ideas for people who wanted to either start or continue their yoga practice based on a disability or a change in the way that their body was moving. And so we wanted to offer something that met their barriers. So there was the accessibility to getting into a place. There might be the cost that can be challenging, or the feeling of being invisible or feeling included. It can be hard when I've had yoga studios say they were concerned about having wheelchairs ruin their floors. It doesn't make a very inviting space for people to come. So what we've done is offered this program to help people come together along with some volunteer support, as well as trying to get some teacher training out there so that more people can learn about how we practice in this way that's helping really drive what the meaning of yoga is meant to be. Yoga is the idea of union of mind, body, spirit, and even more, I believe it's about humanity and community and compassion. So by donating to our program, you will help sponsor more student access and future teachers and therapists that might be able to help expand this to others. Thanks for considering our program, and we wish you the best.
Thank you so much. I want to get back to writing. You talked about that you started writing about yoga, and you have such beautiful words to say and write, and I'm a big fan of your poetry. For anyone that doesn't know, Shawna has poetry as part of her podcast, so I definitely encourage you to check that out. And one of the poems that you shared online the other day really caught my attention, in which you said that yoga can be a movement or it can be just movement. And I would love for you to expand a little bit on that thought.
I know that's the piece that brought us together, so I'm very grateful for that piece. And I also think that piece was a turning point for me in my own solidification of my mission and understanding, why is it that I want to spend my time on yoga? And I asked myself for a long time, like, is it enough? Am I doing enough if this is like where I want to spend my life's work? And so the idea of the piece is that I think there's a great power and potential in yoga, for that reason that we just discussed about bringing ourselves into true presence, and what would happen if people, including myself, right, I'm not exempt, were to operate within the world from that space. I think things would be very different. The piece was written almost in reaction to this experience of disappointment that I was having at these studio classes, not because I judge the individuals who were leading them. They were doing the best that they could. Maybe, I don't know, actually, if that's true. Assume the best, right? I will assume that they were. However, at a certain point, our best isn't good enough yet. And that goes for me too. And I know that sounds like a really harsh thing, but there's a potential that we have with every single yoga class to move people and to not push our views on them, but to rather open the door for a sense of transformation for them. And it makes me really sad when that opportunity is missed. And also when it's replaced with harmful things to people, like discussion of burning off some holiday pounds or trimming down and things like that were being said too, that made me really sad, because that's supposed to be a safe space from those sort of things. And that to me is really tragic, right? So I think in reaction to all of that, I ended up writing this piece. It's on this idea of yoga can be the doorway for humanity to transform, or it can be the doorway to a gym for reps and sets and six packs and a better ass. What do you want to choose? Where are we going as a society? So I think that yoga can be a movement or just movement. That line is the one that stood out to everybody when I shared it. Or yoga can be our liberation or our disguise. That's the other line that people have told me has been really impactful for them. The movement aspect, I think we understand that, a broader direction with impact that yoga can have, or just reps and sets. That's the literal meaning of that. And then our liberation or our disguise is about, it can really truly move you. Yoga can. Or it can be a good vibes only, I'm a yogi, look at me living peacefully. But really it can be rather a disguise when it's not actually fully embodied. And unfortunately, that's the practice, right? It's not that easy to fully embody it, and especially not that easy to go out into the world and to live with it.
How do we, both yoga teachers, yoga students, and just people who maybe have never had anything to do with yoga, make sure that we hold each other accountable to kind of reclaim yoga as a movement, as a collective?
Yeah. So the simple answer is leading by example, because it's very hard to push people into doing any particular thing. But there's something that has come to my attention, and I don't know if I heard this or if this is an original thought. I don't know. So I will just give that disclaimer. But it's come to my attention that there's really 4 ways to practice the yoga and teach yoga. And the first one is where we often start, which is this sort of ignorance is bliss. Good vibes only. I'm going to do my yoga. This is great. I'm in this tiny little jam-packed strip mall place, and I'm listening to some Drake and some hip hop, which again, no shame against that. That can also be a profound experience. But you don't really ever take it beyond that. You don't ever really care about where the yoga came from or what's really the value behind it. So that's kind of the first way. The second way is when you realize, oh my gosh, what has happened to yoga? This is tragic. This is terrible. The West has ruined yoga. Capitalism has ruined yoga. I'm not going to practice at all. Like negative. Then the third way that you can live is, oh, this is terrible and the West has ruined yoga and these people shouldn't be teaching yoga. I'm going to try to set about changing it. I'm going to try, despite my negative take on yoga, to push through and to make a difference. Now, the final and fourth way is to look a little bit closer and see the beauty in it. This doesn't mean positive vibes only, but it means starting from a place of, wow, I actually am glad that these people are at least having an introduction to yoga, because maybe from here, there's the potential for something more. Wow, it's actually a beautiful thing that yoga is worldwide, and it's a beautiful thing that people are being met where they are at. If they're not ready for 40 minutes of meditation, it's great that they can listen to Drake and that they can move their bodies. And maybe in their 2 minutes of shavasana, they are feeling something. And at the same time, I am going to do everything in my power to make the change that I want to see. You see, so from that fourth and final place, we're so much more impactful and so much more powerful. Because a lot of times I see like this real negative take on yoga from the people who have the awareness of it. And I would challenge us, like, have the awareness of the problem, but don't have that negative approach, because we sabotage our own success from that. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it does. It does. What would a world look like in which we all practice that last form of yoga?
Oh,
just to let us dream a little bit.
Yeah, I believe a lot in this concept of levels of energy and raising up the level of energy from which we're approaching life and doing everything. And I don't believe in these sort of instant manifestation things, but I do believe in the power of when you start to raise the level of energy, or like raise the mood. We can call it the mood or the emotion. It doesn't need to be energy and speak like that. But you know how it feels when you walk into a place where people are happy and where they're welcoming. I mean, it's magnificent. And yeah, I dream about it too. I think that's why I started the Leadership in Yoga podcast, because I was wondering what would happen if world leaders and these big businesses and leaders of those sorts of things were to practice yoga. And that was my dream. Like, I wanted to teach yoga to world leaders. And now I don't need to do it, but I hope one of my listeners will, or many of them will. And we probably are, because you never know who's in your class. There's always going to be polarity in the world. There's always going to be that sort of light and dark, and the night and the day. So I'm sure there would be like unintended consequences of everybody living in that way too.
Yeah.
So little disclaimer there, but yeah, I love that contemplation, or that thought.
Perfect. So here's a call to everyone listening. Send this to the most powerful people you know, and have them send it to the most powerful people they know, so that we all start practicing yoga and raise the vibrations around the world. It would be better than what we have now, that's for sure. I don't think that's a doubt.
Truly.
I have a question that I ask all of my guests that's not related to yoga, but maybe it is. What does it mean for you to be human?
Kiki, this is such a good question. I've actually never been asked this. You're allowed to steal it. Yeah, maybe I'll steal this for my podcast. Well, non-stealing, with your permission, of course.
Absolutely.
I feel like, to be human for me, I'm thinking it's more like to be experiencing all of this. You know, I'm not claiming that this is the correct thing to believe, but I'm going to share what I believe. If you had a creator, or if you want to call it God, or whatever you wanted to call it, it's like a divine crystal. And you may have heard me talk about this on the podcast. But this thing is so perfect, and I envision that it shatters itself into billions of pieces, or infinite pieces. And I believe that we're all a piece of that. And I believe that we're here in this human existence to experience lack, and to experience reclaiming our power and understanding what we're really capable of. And I don't mean that in some like high in the sky way. I mean like tangibly moving forward and understanding that we have the power to undo not only our own errors, but also the errors of the people who have come before us, because it's a confusing place to be here as a human.
Yes.
There's a lot of suffering and intensity. And I think that that is absolutely part of the plan and the experience. I think we're seeing that sort of play out, and more we're understanding a little bit more like what we're made of, but we can never fully know what it means to be human. It's like when you're trying to contemplate infinity, you try to imagine if space is infinitely expanding like they tell us that it is, and to what is it expanding? I mean, your mind cannot wrap around. And I think that's, part of it. Like, we're not supposed to fully understand it, right? We are limited as humans. We're very limited, and it's just bit by bit to uncover a little bit more of what are we made of? Who are we really, through our actions, through our practice, through our experience of living.
I love that answer. That's such a good answer. And something that I heard that really stuck with me is we're human beings, not human doings.
Yes.
And I think that encompasses it so well in everything that you've said in this episode. It's about the experience. It's about the being. And I'm really grateful for how you've shared with us how the yoga can be a help to experience that being a little bit more peacefully and a little bit more present. So thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge with us. Everybody who's listening, definitely make sure to check out Shawna's podcast, Leadership in Yoga. I'm going to put Shawna's Instagram and everything into the show notes to give her a follow and stay updated with all of the exciting adventures that she's going on. Thank you so much. I'm going to finish this podcast with a wish that the last guest left for you and for our listeners. The wish is that you treat yourself as the main character of your life by making choices for yourself instead of others.
We were talking about taking back your power, and when you do that, then you can choose how you want to use it and how you want to use your intention.
Amazing.
Thank you, Kiki, also for having me on the podcast. And also, I will say, if you're listening, also please subscribe and share and continue to support Kiki's work, because we need more things like this. And if you felt moved by this at all, and you've ever started a project like this, you know what that support means. It means everything. So yeah, I super encourage, if you're listening, take that extra step. That is a one little act of kindness and momentum in the right direction that you have in your hands right now. So yeah, thank you for this experience, and I loved it.